Welcome back to The Price of Business. I am your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. You know, I have been a big fan of Scott Walker, and there's things certainly that I like about Scott Walker, but he, it's like he's really drug his feet to get into this race. And finally, he got around to doing it, and I really had an incredibly busy weekend. I just kind of missed the whole announcement. I only found out on Monday, yesterday, that it actually happened, and I didn't get around to talking about it until today. And so
that's okay. No one else did either.
No one else did either, and here's the audio clip making that announcement. This is from Fox News. We're going to share that first, and then I'm sure Sigmund and Kramer and I will chat a little bit about it.
At tonight's special report, 6 p.m. Eastern, you're going to have Scott Walker making it official. I mean, he already has on social media, but he's going to start presenting his case officially tonight during your hour. And I'm looking at the New York Times this morning, and I see this headline saying he's viewed as authentic, but is he, quote unquote, smart? You can already see the mainstream media sort of jumping on the fact.
The New York Times? Shockingly
about the fact that he doesn't have a college degree. But it's a serious issue about whether or not voters will care. What's your thought?
Well, listen, where he's from, he's been reelected not once, not twice, but 3 times, you may remember, because he faced a recall. He's a conservative governor in a blue state. He's going to run on his resume and his record. And, the whole college thing, I think, is really not a huge deal, especially in much of the country. It may be on the coasts, but it seems like it doesn't make a difference in middle America, at least according to the polls. I will say one thing that is potentially problematic is a quote this morning in the National Journal by a senior Walker advisor who essentially said he's making a conservative move to the right for Iowa, and that there's plenty of time to come back to be a middle-of-the-road moderate later on in the race. That is not the kind of message that you want out on this day, but it's out there.
It sounds like the Etch-a-Sketch comment from 2012 with Mitt Romney's camp, right?
Well, exactly. And listen, this campaign, what we've seen with Donald Trump, what we've seen with other people who start to catch on, authentic, I say what I mean, lay it out there. People are tired of politicians speak, and that seems to fit that.
Okay, but we're not tired of Special Report, where he summarizes all the day's events. We're going to be watching tonight, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Mr. Baer, thank you very much.
Yeah, and so that was it. He finally jumped in, and those kind of remarks make people nervous. That's why when you look at a guy, you got to vote for his record or against his record. Overall, it's a good record. It's a solid record. And the amount of courage that he demonstrated taking on the unions wows people, and it woos people. I will say that over the weekend, I read an interesting article in Reason magazine. Anyone who listens to this show knows that I've become increasingly more and more libertarian over time. I think that, there's an old saying, a conservative is a liberal that's been mugged. Well, a libertarian is a conservative who knows who's doing the mugging, and I think that's the government. The government does a lot of that. But there's a interesting quote here in Reason magazine about what it was is a review of all the various books out there, and he said this reviewer said, sadly, the excitement of Walker's book, Unintimidated, does not extend to its policy prescriptions. There are any number of conclusions that might be drawn from Walker's ordeal, starting with whether Wisconsin's school children really should be left in the custody of people whose idea of political discourse is donning ski masks, seizing buildings, and chanting, "This is what democracy looks like."
Right.
Walker considers none of them and pish-poshes the idea that ideology of any sort was involved, even at as simple a level as shrinking the government a little. We rejected the false choice between raising taxes and cutting government services, he says. The real lessons, he writes, is that our country needs to be more like a Frank Capra movie. America wants leadership. And in times of crisis, they don't care if it's Democratic or Republican. They will stand with those who offer bold ideas and have the courage to take on the tough issues, Walker writes. At best, that's the babbling value-free civics of Mr. Smith goes to Washington, says the reviewer. At worst, it's a recipe for fascism, which, whatever you may think of it, certainly does not lack for determination or bold ideas. What it isn't is a battle cry likely to rally the GOP. Elect us or somebody?
Yeah.
I increasingly worry about Scott Walker, and I still consider him by far among the best of the choices. But, that little statement that he made, and politicians can't, and he didn't make it, his campaign staff made that statement. They make dumb statements just like everyone else.
Well, which is even worse because now he's got to either clean up after them or he told them to say that. That's the
set
way
expectations.
That's what the entire machine is operating under, and that's bad. I mean, if you think you're going to be able to start conservative and move moderate throughout look, that's been said about both sides. You start liberal and then you move more moderate. You got to win the primary and you got to hit your base. And if your base is liberal for the Democrats, then you got to be liberal. And then you move kind of to the right, to the middle for the general election. And so it's not surprising that he would say that because that's the conventional
what
wisdom.
Everyone's ever done.
That's the conventional wisdom.
This is why, by the way, Donald Trump's on fire. This is why Donald Trump is hot, because I don't think he even knows how to do that.
Right.
That takes years of experience being a legislator in your state house, running for, Congress that they typically do, finally becoming a governor or a U.S. senator before they make the big jump. That takes a lot of training to learn how to be a liar.
Right.
And how to hedge your bets verbally. And Donald Trump doesn't even have that capacity, which is frankly why people like Donald Trump.
Yeah, but ultimately Donald Trump is not a viable candidate. And if he is, we're all in trouble.
Oh, he's going to get sabotaged, but Donald Trump's on fire, and he's on fire for all the right reasons.
Well,
he's on. You know what Donald Trump is? Donald Trump is like Moses to a population that is in a long-term slavery situation called political correctness. And he is like a guy that offers hope to people that feel oppressed by their culture where they can't even speak freely anymore, that he's kind of like a way out of this nightmare that very few people want to be in. When you got comedians not wanting to even go to the hottest place for comedians to test their work, which used to be college campuses, because of how psychologically and emotionally oppressive that environment has become. We live in a bizarre upside-down culture. And little old men and little old women who want to speak freely, even if it sounds like hate, they want the right to be able to do that without being obliterated for doing that. We all want to get out of the nanny state, and I think we see him as a way of doing that. And I'm not supporting. He's not even in the middle tier, of my candidate choices, but he is on to something, and I think I'm one of the first writers. I wrote this, weeks ago over at Huffington Post about him being tapping into that silent majority. He's now fully got that silent majority going, and he's getting momentum going. He can't win because the media is going to destroy him. If he got the nomination, he would be obliterated.
That's just it. He's not a viable candidate for that reason. They look at him as a clown. They're going to portray him as a clown, a hateful clown, a bigoted clown, a racist clown, blah, 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 but a clown nonetheless. And Scott Walker, here's the thing, Kevin. I keep hearing people say things like, oh, but he went against the unions and he won. That was in Wisconsin. That's in one state.
In one of the hardest states.
It's one state.
Yeah.
To win the presidency, you have to win a majority of all 50 states. And guess what? The Democrats are going to throw everything they can at him.
They have nothing left to send.
All they have to do.
They can't
here's
create
the
anything
thing.
new.
But here's the thing. This is what people don't understand. They threw everything against him, and the Wisconsin voters didn't buy it. That doesn't mean that the other voters in the other states aren't going to buy it.
First of all, they threw everything at him and got on national news. He's the most vetted candidate out of all of them,
and nobody knows anything about him.
What do you mean you don't know
people
anything
know
about
more.
him?
People know more about Donald because the majority of people in the United States don't pay attention And so when it comes to his actual policies, when it comes to his actual positions, they don't know.
The pundits would already be saying, this is what you need to worry about for Scott Walker. They don't have that. They don't have that narrative because it doesn't exist. And this guy is the most vetted candidate I have ever seen before a presidential campaign, except for a guy who already holds the office. He's more vetted than Barack Obama is. And that dude's been in office for 8 years.
Well, I'm telling you right now, candidate. Just because he did well in Wisconsin and he got reelected.
A blue state.
I understand that.
A blue
but
state
just because
that is
he did
one
well
of the
there.
most pro-union states out there, and he slashed salaries of union employees across the board.
We are entering into uncharted
so who's
territory.
Better than Scott Walker?
It doesn't matter.
No, it does matter.
No,
so
that's
better.
not the question. I'm telling you, we're entering into uncharted territory where someone like Bernie Sanders is getting tens of thousands of people showing up to his rallies. Okay? The country is changing. The country wants to be more like Europe.
I believe that the more, I don't know, I mean, I say that same thing myself. I write that same thing myself. But at the same time, I think the reason why Bernie Sanders is hot, the reason why Donald Trump is hot is because neither one of them filter their language. Neither one of them. They both speak.
I agree.
They don't hedge their bets. They don't hedge their conversation. They speak with authenticity. Even though nutty, they speak with authenticity, and the American people like that. They like that.
I will say that there's a certain segment of the American people that like that.
And they apparently are both liberal and conservative.
Right, and because it's not on one side or the other. But when it comes to governance issues, when it comes to how we're going to take the country and what direction we're going to go, Kevin, you'd have. Now, I'm not saying you personally. Anyone would have to have their head in the sand if they think that we're becoming more conservative and not more liberal. We're becoming more liberal. We're becoming more socialist.
Yeah, America.
People are becoming more comfortable with the idea of the government taking care of them, of all of us. Because of that, I'm telling you right now, it does not matter how vetted Scott Walker is. He is going to be loathed because he went against ladies in the union who are teachers, who are just trying to make a living.
Unions are, first of all, I do agree with you. I mean, you were in here when I interviewed, Tom DeLay, and I said America has taken demographically a turn, and he argued with me. He thought I was talking about immigration. Forget about immigration. We have an entire culture of entitlement now. We have a whole culture that no longer defends the fact they're on food stamps or on unemployment for 2 years.
There's no pride left.
I know Tea Party participants who were unemployed and on food stamps, not food stamps, but on unemployment compensation for 2 years because every job offered to them was beneath them.
They took advantage of the system, which they are mad that there is a system that allows them to do that, but they still took advantage of it.
But meanwhile, unions are in decline, even if they're spending more money on them than at any time. What if they added another closed union shop state? They haven't added a closed union shop state in years, but they've added 3 right-to-work states in the last 5 years.
Yeah, but all that can change.
I know it can change, but there's nothing that you can look at in terms of benchmark to indicate that it's changing now. If anything, people are developed a hostile attitude towards unions. Even if they're entitled, they have a hostile attitude towards unions because they sit there and they look at the numbers that the 10 worst performing states for job creating are all closed union shop states, and the 10 best performing ones, except for Colorado, are right to work states. And so,
you're talking about people in the know. You're talking about people who are policy wonks.
I'm talking about people who decided to vote against closed union shops.
Okay,
which are a lot of states.
I'm telling you, the media can craft a narrative. The Democrats can obviously feed that narrative to the media, and it will be done in such a way. It's all about class warfare now. It is all about us against them, the haves and the have-nots. And I'm telling you right now, that's going to be the theme. It's not going to be safety and security and all. It's not going to be Iran. It doesn't matter. And none of that stuff matters.
They don't care. People don't care.
It's all going to be about who is going to help me achieve what I want to achieve, or just allow me to make my bills and all that stuff. I'll tell you who the GOP should run. I've said it before. Santa Claus. They need to find Santa Claus. They will win the election if they find Santa Claus on the top of the ticket. And until then, get used to bitter disappointment. That's my thought.
Yeah, well, and whoever gets the nomination is going to be running not only against whoever the Democratic nominee is going to be, but also against the media. And that's really hard to do because media does largely control the narrative. And that's the reason why it's been very difficult to get someone, who doesn't just love government, love socialism, love political correctness. It's very hard to get those guys elected.
Yep. And it will continue to be so. It will continue to be so. You're going to see 2016 is going to be a really hateful election process.
Oh, that's for sure.
And there's going to be a lot of name calling, and there's going to be a lot of divisiveness.
I do know this much. They better take care. They better make sure to handle Trump with kid gloves, because I tell you right now, he is serious when he says he'll run independently, and that will just completely torpedo the GOP.
Oh, I thought you meant he's serious when he says, "I'll sue you."
No, he's talking about running independently if he doesn't feel like he gets a fair shake. He's not joking. This stuff where the chairman of the party is giving him lectures, that kind of stuff is going to get the GOP in serious trouble.
And it should.
They better make sure it's extremely fair.
Look, the GOP's in trouble for a good reason.
Yeah. All right. When we come back, much more for you. Do want to remind you, best content here can be found over there at usdailyreview.com.